Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Ware Brothers podcast. We're coming at you on Sunday, February. Oh, not February, Sunday, March 20th, 2022. Finally back at our scheduled time. So it's good to be back. Bromigo, what's going on? How you doing today?
What's up, bro? Donkadonk. We're back on our same bro channel, same bro time.
Back again, back again. It's
That's right.
so two episodes in 1 week, but we did it. We're
You
we're,
guys
we're
are
back.
so lucky. So lucky.
I mean, I
That's right.
got millions of emails again talking about how people were so sad that we didn't release last Sunday. They had to wait an extra 2 days.
I know.
Mail was flooding in, and I just want to say that we're back. We're back on track.
People were clamoring and inundating our inboxes, wanting to know what in the world was going on.
Every week.
I know. Last week was a big episode, so we had to spend a little bit extra time getting things ready and just right for everybody. But yeah, we hit the ground running this week with this week's episode. We're super excited. Our deep dive for this week, as we alluded to last week, is a little bit of hidden gems. So we've come up with 10 for you that we're going to be diving into. Yeah, Ken, how was your week, though?
Week was good. Week was good. House is nice and warm, but it's
Nice.
also warming up outside here in the Northeast. Is finally, we spring is on the horizon. So,
Oh, it's so nice. So nice.
and I got to say, because I was shocked when I looked at it, this is episode 8.
I know.
Can you believe it?
I
The
know.
eighth episode already.
Where does the time go?
I
Where does the
don't
time
know.
go? I know. Well,
According to Lincoln Park, right out the window.
I will take your word for it. But sure. Right out. Why would it go out the window? It doesn't make any sense.
That's the song.
Yeah, but
Where's
why
the time
can't
go? Right out the window.
why can't the
Trying to
time
hold
go
on.
out the door?
You'd have to ask them.
Because it doesn't rhyme with go.
Yes. Yes.
I want some time more. Went right out the door.
Well, see, maybe you should have been in the band. They could have gone a whole different direction.
They could have.
They sound like thieves. Thieves don't use doors; they use windows, right?
That's true. I guess. Sure.
In the movies.
All right. Well, yes, it is definitely warming up here in the Northeast. I've been using the pellet stove a little bit less, which has been nice. Saving on some oil because oil is through the roof expensive right now. It is insane. I had to fill up my truck the other day. So it's the third week in a row I've topped almost $120 at the gas pump to fill up my truck.
I bet you're so glad you bought a truck.
Yeah, it was great last year, not so much now. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, anything else to add before we jump into this week's episode?
Nope. I think that's that. As far as that goes, I say we get right into the news.
All right, sounds good. So this week in the news, one thing I was super excited for. Did you ever see? Was it 2 years ago they released the Sonic the Hedgehog movie?
So I have not seen the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
I saw it. It was probably one of the best video game adaptations I've seen turned into a movie. I watched it with my son. He's a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan, and we absolutely loved it. Anyways, the reason I bring it up is they've had a couple of trailers out for the second one, and they just unveiled the poster for the second Sonic movie, and it's basically mimicking the box art from the original Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which I thought was pretty cool. And they
That's
also
awesome.
announced a Knuckles spin-off TV series coming to Paramount Plus as well, which my son is very much looking forward to. He, as most people do, loves Knuckles.
Knuckles is his favorite.
Yeah, he likes Knuckles. He likes Tails, but when Knuckles came about, it was pretty cool. I had to bring him to get his haircut today, and I was like, "Hey, bud, I'm like, have you seen the trailer for the new Sonic movie?" And he was like, "No." So we sat and watched it, and of course, as soon as Knuckles popped out, he was all excited, and he was like, "Oh, Knuckles is a bad guy. Who do you think's gonna win, Sonic or Knuckles?" And then he was like, "I think Sonic's gonna win because he's the good guy, and the good guys usually win." But he was super excited when I told him that there's a TV series coming starring Knuckles as well.
That's really cool. Yeah, I of course am a Knuckles fan. We had for the PC, we had a Sonic and Knuckles collection video game, which we played a bunch when we were kids. That you could actually, it came with the original Sonic game, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles.
Yep.
I think it came with those 4 games, and you could select on any of the games whether you wanted to play as Sonic, Sonic and Tails, or Knuckles, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. We did have as a kid. I'm pretty sure I had all 4 of those. But yeah, so it's pretty cool to see the industry paying tribute to the box art from the original middle game, which is pretty cool. Another thing I saw this week, super random, it popped up in one of my Facebook feeds. Did you see anything on YouTube about a portable GameCube?
No, I have not.
So the creator of it, he's a YouTuber named Ginger of Oz. So apparently he saw a mock-up. It was a mock-up of a picture of one that was floating around back in 2007. And he does a ton of like 3D print. He's obviously a very smart guy. Does like 3D printing of consoles and kind of turns them into handhelds or different things he's seen. And he thought this was a really cool idea. So I watched the whole video, maybe 15 or 20 minutes long. But shout out, to Ginger of Oz. Super cool. I watched the whole video. And basically, he takes all these components outside of a GameCube and then shrinks them all down and fits them into basically the size of this like a DS type size portable. It was pretty cool. He uses a Wii motherboard so it can play basically all the GameCube and Wii games on it. But it was pretty dope. It was highly recommend checking it out.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, so it's just interesting. Some other news, one thing that I'm sure you've seen since you're a big fan of, but Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak expansion is going to be releasing June 30th. So that was announced this past week, coming onto Switch and PC. Basically, going to have new monsters and new abilities to gain. Have you read much about this yet, Ken?
Not necessarily read much, but saw the release, the trailer for it. Whenever it was this past winter or something, whenever it first was showcased. But I've put a bunch of hours into Rise. It was the first like real like new Monster Hunter title for the Switch, because the Monster Hunter team, they have kind of split off into 2 teams now. You got one team that works on the world franchise of Monster Hunter for like the next gen consoles, and like the major consoles, and then they have like the handheld team that works on, and Rise is the newest like handheld Monster Hunter game. So they both share obviously a lot of like very similar features, but are also unique in their own rights. So obviously the Monster Hunter Rise games, the handheld games, aren't as necessarily high fidelity graphics quite like the World franchise, but Rise was a very good game, very, very great Monster Hunter game. So very excited to see the Sunbreak expansion for it.
Yeah, so just to clarify, obviously we knew the game was coming out for a while, but they announced the release date this past week, which is going to be June 30th. Another piece of news that'll probably interest you that you are part of as well. Elden Ring has surpassed 12 million copies sold since its release on February 25th, and over 1 million of those have come out of Japan. So again, congratulations for being part of the millions and millions.
And millions. Yeah, and just a quick note on that. Elden Ring just this week, just a few days ago, just released a brand new patch that had a lot of bug fixes.
Yeah.
It was a big balance patch, really brought down some weapons that were extremely powerful. So if anyone hasn't been playing in the last couple of weeks, go back in. They've added and it's a couple quality of life features as well. So it was a really big patch for the game. So you're going to see support for Elden Ring going forward.
One side note on your side note, when we talked about last week, the speedrunners, I guess this is greatly reducing the ability of some of these speedrunners as well because of this new update, and that because of the level balancing. I think there was a couple of like spells that were used. Again, I haven't played the game, but from what I understand, there was a couple of like key spells that people are using to make such a quick pass of this game, and this greatly reduced the effectiveness of those spells. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. So one of them I posted, they're like, rest in peace, the speed run of Elden Ring after this download. So another thing that was pretty cool. So a crossover, I don't know if you had seen this, Ken, between Pokemon Arceus and then Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, where basically if you have both games, Arceus along with either Diamond or Pearl, you can acquire the is it the Azure flute in
Yeah,
your
Azure
bedroom?
Flute. Yep.
Yeah, that one too. In your bedroom in Diamond or Pearl, take it to Spear Pillar, which is a top Mount Coronet, and then
Yep.
yeah, and then it'll prompt a battle with Arceus. Just kind of a cool ability crossover between two different games that they have for the Switch.
Yep. Just keep pumping out those reasons why you need to own all the games. Got to collect them all.
See what people are starting to realize, I'm sure they realized years ago, is when the game first came out and it was gotta catch them all, Pokemon, or I should say Game Freak and Nintendo were like, no, you gotta buy them all. That was their strategy. And hello, Jinxie. All right, Ken's cat just popped up into into the screen. Ken got so excited over Pokemon again, he just started purring. So yeah, anyways, I thought that was pretty cool. And lastly, for our news of the week, so for any of you any of those who have the Nintendo Switch and the Switch Online features, especially the expansion version, which has N64 and Sega, they just announced 3 new games that are going to be coming for the Sega version: Super Fantasy Zone, Alien Soldier, and Light Crusader. I'd never heard of any of these, never played any of them. But quick breakdown: basically, Super Fantasy Zone is a side-scrolling shooter that was never released here in the US. So there's something cool they might be able to see here. Alien Soldier is a side-scrolling run and gun, very similar to Contra, but obviously much superior graphics, more futuristic. And lastly, something I might actually check out: Light Crusader. It's an action adventure RPG. Think Secret of Mana, but not as good, at least from everything I read about it. But I may have to check that out when it does release. I think it's going to be in the next few weeks or sometime in April. They'll be adding these to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion.
That's really cool. In the last couple of years, especially with like the Switch Online, you tend to see a lot of games that they say, "Oh, have never released in America," but that they've been bringing over. So that's really cool. I like that kind of idea that they have as far as finally bringing. I wonder how many resources I actually have to dedicate to bring old games like this over. Obviously they need to translate them. So
yeah, the ones that were released here in the US, I can't imagine takes all that much effort. Just probably a little bit of coin to get the rights to those titles to be able to release them, or to give their cut to whoever's the owner of that property. But yeah, the ones that were only released in Japan, I gotta imagine that takes a little bit of effort to translate everything. And then another side note to this for the expansion that I think was just released last night, or information about it was released last night. They'll also be adding to the N64 coming up. I'm super excited about. They have Kirby 64, Mario Tennis. I'm sorry, Mario Golf. Mario Tennis is already on there. And lastly, Pokemon Snap, which I don't know why. I absolutely loved that game when it came out on the N64. I played it quite a bit, and so it'll be pretty cool to see that come to the N64 Online as well.
I can't believe the amount of fans that Pokemon Snap has. I'm not a fan of Pokemon Snap, but so like because obviously, yeah, like the new Pokemon Snap game came out for the Switch. People lost their friggin' minds. I like, people just really love Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, I'm sure it came out, and you were like me. Every time I hear a new strategy RPG comes out, I'm like, cue the eye roll. Yeah, I don't know why. It's one of those things that appealed to me when it came out. So when I actually sent you a text yesterday, I was like, yo, Pokemon Snap is coming to Switch Online. And I will just add, I got 0 response from my brother. Thank you. I'm glad you share my support of Pokemon Snap.
I'm sorry. Mom and Dad are visiting.
So sure. Use that as an excuse.
I was distracted.
All right. So, anyways, that covers our news of the week. What do we got for games of the week, Ken? We have another laundry list of games coming out this week.
Yeah, not too bad. Not as bad as a couple of weeks ago, but kicking it off, we have Rune Factory 5 comes out March 22nd for the Nintendo Switch. This is a fast-paced action RPG combat. I think, are you familiar with the Harvest Moon series?
Yes.
So think kind of an action RPG Harvest Moon. So it's an RPG simulator. So you can cook, you can have a farm, you can craft, you can, get a wife, you can find a partner you can marry, but then you also have some action RPG, combat, and some mechanics in the game itself. So that's Rune Factory 5. Obviously,
Question.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, now I know it says Rune Factory 5. Is that the official name of the title, or is this the 5th installment of Rune Factory?
Literally the 5th installment of Rune Factory.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, that's an interesting title, Rune Factory 5, but I'm with you now. Okay.
So it's funny because like you would think that, like, I personally would classify this as now mind you, I've never played any of the Rune Factory games,
Same
but
here.
clearly people must like them if they're on Rune Factory 5. But
Must be
I
like
would almost
Pokemon
consider
Snap.
this I would almost consider this a hidden gem, because I mean, how big, marketing does Rune Factory get, but so that comes out March 22nd for the Switch. We have
Cool.
Norco that comes out March 24th for the PC. Its Steam description reads: Southern Gothic point and click narrative adventure. Immerse player in the sinking suburbs and verdant industrial swamps of a distorted South Louisiana.
Wow. That's riveting.
Next is High Rise City. Comes out March 24th for PC and Steam Early Access. Steam's description reads: High Rise City offers a new spin on city simulations and tycoon games, expanding the economy and resource management aspect. Modern take on a genre enriched with complex resource-based economy system. So if you're a fan of the old SimCity games, which were obviously, when we were kids, those were really popular.
Yeah.
Those are very popular games. So this may be a game, if those type of games, if you were up your alley and you missed those, give High Rise City a try.
And it kind of looks like it's also a combination of like a Roller Coaster Tycoon, I would imagine.
Yes.
Because like from what I understand with the SimCity, like you're building cities and stuff, but you're not really capitalizing or making money like you are in like a Roller Coaster Tycoon type game. So it looks like it's kind of a combination of both, I would imagine.
That's what it sounds like.
Cool.
Next is Lumote, the Master Note. Lumote, the Master Note.
Is it Master Note or Master Moat?
No, because if you look, I think the R and the M, I think you would think it should be Master Note, because anywho, Lumote, the Master Moat, maybe Chronicles, comes out March 24th for the PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and Stadia. Meet Lumote, the squishiest bioluminescent creature in this beautiful 3D puzzle platformer. Take control of the world's inhabitants on a quest to the great depths of size control from the Master Moat. Seize depths to seize control from the Master Moat. So
we're just knocking this new games of the week out of the park.
So that looks awesome.
Yeah, I don't even understand any of that. Cool. Anyways,
that was Steam's description, by the way.
Yes.
So next
excellent
is
job, Steam.
Memoir Blue. So it probably is Master Moat, because I was thinking that I was getting these two games mixed up. So it is Lumote, the Master Moat Chronicles. Anywho, the next game, a Memoir Blue, comes out March 24th for the PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and One, and Switch. A song from years ago triggers a flood of memories for champion swimmer Miriam. Embark on an evocative journey through her turbulent childhood and the complicated relationship she shared with her devoted mother. Deep.
Wow.
For indie fans, that might be a fun game.
This next one is even deeper.
An open world Kirby game. Kirby in the Forgotten Land. It comes out March 25th for the Switch. Now, in all seriousness, though, this Kirby game is probably one of the biggest Kirby releases in its franchise. This is, I know you're really excited for this game. This looks like a Kirby game on the scale of now, mind you, when I say this, on the scale of Breath of the Wild, I mean on a scale as far as for the franchise. For the franchise, for the Kirby franchise, this looks like the biggest adventure that Kirby has ever been on. So for Kirby fans out there, definitely worth a pickup. Very reminiscent of sort of like a Mario Odyssey level of game, Breath of the Wild game. So this is a big title for Nintendo, big title for Kirby. So this is definitely one. I'll be really curious to see how the critics and players rate this game. See how they like it.
Yeah, I have it on my favorites list. I played through Kirby's Dream Land. I had it originally for the Game Boy, and then when I got the Switch, I played through Kirby's Adventure for the NES, and those are the only ones I've played so far. But like I said, they're getting ready to release Kirby 64 for the N64 expansion version, so I'll probably check that out. But this is looking to be like along those same lines of basically going from Mario 64 to again what you see with Odyssey and then Kirby 64 into this. I know there's been a few Kirby games in between, but yeah, I'm excited. This looks pretty cool. I'll check it out for sure.
Do you know if they have a demo out on the eShop for this?
It's a good question. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Maybe.
But if they do, check it out. See if they do. Next, we have Ghostwire Tokyo. This is another looks like a big AAA game. I believe it's from Bethesda Studios. I believe it's from the same guys who brings you Elder Scrolls and Fallout. Don't quote me on that, but I think it is. But it comes out March 25th for the PC and PlayStation 5. Tokyo's population has vanished, and deadly supernatural forces prowl the streets. Use an arsenal of elemental abilities to unravel the truth behind the disappearance and save Tokyo. So this is a first-person aspect, like the Elder Scrolls games and Fallout games, and it looks like a really sci-fi, like I said, supernatural type thing. Like I said, it's for the PC and PlayStation 5, so it's only for next gen consoles. So the graphics look very good. Gameplay looks really interesting. This has a lot of hype surrounding it too. So I don't believe, again, please don't quote me on this, but I do not believe this is a multiplayer game at all. I think this is just a single player experience. But if someone wants to check on that, feel free. And lastly, we have Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Comes out March 25th for the PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and One. Embark on an adventure filled with whimsy, wonder, and high-powered weaponry. Roll your own multi-class hero, then shoot, loot, slash, and cast on a quest to stop the Dragon Lord. Yep, it's published by Bethesda Software and developed by Tango.
There you go.
So, thank you. I appreciate that. Ghostwire Tokyo. That is not Tiny Tina's Wonderland.
Bethesda's like, what'd you say?
But for fans of the Borderland video game series, Tiny Tina's Wonderland is like a spin-off, takes place in the same the same universe as Borderlands. So it has that same cell shaded cartoony sort of art style, and of course, again, people who are fans of Borderlands, who are fans of the looter shooter type games, this is going to have all that.
Looter shooter, I like it.
So those are your games of the coming out next week.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken.
You're very welcome. And we'll just move right along to, actually, let me ask you, obviously, other than Kirby, any other games from here you're interested on checking out?
Possibly Ghostwire Tokyo. That just the story sounds pretty cool. Really, other than that, not a whole lot else on this list that interests me, but that one sounds pretty cool for sure.
To be honest with you, I totally could see you trying Rune Factory 5 and then just getting sucked in for like 60 hours, and you're like, I don't even know like how it happened. I built this garden, and then I dove into this dungeon, and then I crafted this, and I feel like you would just like get lost in a game.
Well, at the same time, I did used to have goats and chickens, so yeah, it's right up my alley. If that's what we're doing is raising farm animals, perfect.
Oh, you played Goat Simulator?
What?
The game Goat Simulator?
Yes, it was called Being Married and Having Goats.
Yes. No, so for those who don't know, goats. Taylor had real goats and chickens.
Yes. And chickens. I did. Yep. The goats were wonderful. I love the two sisters, and then we adopted a third male who was an escape artist, and my poor neighbors kept having to corral these goats when they would escape. And eventually, after a couple of years, we were like, well, enough is enough. We tried and failed successfully at having goats.
So there also is a game called Goat Simulator, just so you know.
Wow. They were delicious, by the way. I'm just kidding. They weren't delicious. We didn't eat them. We gave them back to people.
Sure you did. The chickens, though. Anywho,
They
so
were
this week in
delicious for the
history.
fox.
This week in history for the games, we have Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion came out 16 years ago, back in 2006.
Wow.
I can't believe this, and I'm curious what they'll do next year, but the Game Boy Advance came out this week, back in 2003, so 19 years ago. So next year will be 20-year anniversary for the Game Boy Advance. That'd be a good time for them to do a special Game Boy Advance game remake in honor of the Game Boy Advance 20th year.
Most of the time I see they will give more they will pay more respect for a game that came out on a certain anniversary more so than like a console. But it would be amazing if next year Nintendo was like, hey, we're going to add a bunch of Game Boy Advance games to the Switch online. That would be freaking amazing for the 20th anniversary.
That's even better. I would love to see. And again, that's something I don't understand with the fact that the Game Boy, the Nintendo DS, or the Nintendo 3DS, and say like the Wii and the Wii U, their virtual console shop had so much more games than what we have on the Switch. I do not understand.
Yeah.
Why can't that be on the? I don't get it.
I don't get it. The only thing that I think can play into factors must have been some sort of contract when they partnered with all these companies that had these games where they could only release them on the 3DS and the Wii U and the Wii. But again, you would think that these companies that made these games, if that was the case, Nintendo would just be like, hey, we're going to transfer all these over to the Switch and people can download them for the same price and you're just going to keep getting your cut of the money or whatever it is. I don't know. It just, it drives me insane. There were so many games I'd be willing to pay money for from these older consoles so I could play them portably on the Switch.
Well, and I guess that's also the thing as well, is the fact that on the Wii and the Wii U and the 3DS, you had to pay for each title on the virtual console that you wanted. Whereas the Nintendo Switch, obviously, you just have the monthly, the Nintendo service,
subscription service.
So you're not paying for any of the virtual console games other than just the monthly subscription. But I hope that over time we will get all those games that were on there, because they had Game Boy games, they had Game Boy Advance games. So so yeah, maybe like you said, maybe next year that'll be a perfect time for them to add Game Boy Advance.
I tell you what, Nintendo, if you're listening, if you want to come on the podcast, you'd be happy to. You can pay your own way to come out here to New England, and we'll put you on, and we can debate this and find out what in the world is going on, because that would be amazing. Just let us know, or even drop us a line, send us an email,
like you always do on Twitter every week. Anyway,
that's right. We've been ignoring you, but we will ignore you no more. So, send me another email, and we'll definitely respond. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, or just send us an email. Again, moving on.
Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker turns 19 years old. Came out in 2003. Hard to believe that was already 20 years ago.
I know.
And then Final Fight, which is a very fan favorite old fighting game, that came out 29 years ago, back in 1993.
That's crazy how long ago that came out.
Right?
Yeah, I remember when it came out, just being like, it was like one of those games that was going to challenge like the Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter type fighting games. Yeah. Didn't quite do that, but they thought they were at the time.
Yep. So those are the games, some notable games and systems that came out this week.
Perfect. So getting to the main topic of our podcast this week, this is when we were first kicking around the idea of doing a podcast, this was one of the ideas that we talked about we were going to touch on at some point. It was going to be hidden gems, things that we have played over the years. And so I guess, when I say hidden gems, these are ones that Ken and I have talked about over the years that we just really haven't heard a whole lot of other people discussing. I'm sure there are going to be some of these that people hear and go, oh, yeah, that game's popular. I've heard of it. But these are just, me personally, these are ones that like we talk about and we get excited about, and we just don't hear very many people talk about, or a lot of these people haven't even heard of. So this is our list of 10. We each picked 5 that we're going to do and just kind of go back and forth. Ken, you excited for this?
I am very excited, and this is also another series that we're not going to be doing week after week after week, but
Yeah.
every now and again we can come up with another 10 games that we find of hidden gems. So these aren't necessarily like the best hidden gems that we could think of or anything. So but yeah, I'm very excited. I think this list is a awesome list that's put together. All these games I highly recommend, if you've not played them
Yeah.
or heard of them, or I'm hoping this jogs some people's memories that you go out and play these games because they're great. We're big fans of all these games.
I think it's funny that you say that these are 10 exciting, great games that we love, because it'd be pretty uneventful if we were like, oh, here's a list of 10 shitty games that nobody should ever play.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we
We
wouldn't
should-
do that to you.
We could do a list. We'd be like, here's a list of 10 games. It'll start with Superman 64, The Return of Superman.
That's true. Yeah, do not play that game. at all.
Yeah, don't play that game. All right, so kicking off, this is one that I don't even remember. I think we just rented this. We didn't own this, did we?
I don't remember. I just remember playing it a lot, but
And I
think
have
you're
no
right.
idea how we picked. I'm pretty sure we rented this a couple of times. And so this first one is Beetle Adventure Racing. Now you hear this title and you think this is going to be the most boring game on the planet. Which again, I don't know how we picked this up. I don't know if there's just everything else was rented out that weekend, and we just were like, we'll take a chance at this. Or I think maybe we sent Dad to the store. What were we thinking? And every once in a while, a broken clock is right twice a day, and he or somebody brought home this game. Anyways, Beetle Adventure Racing came out here in February of 1999 for the N64. It was developed by Paradigm Entertainment. The only really other notable game they developed was Pilot Wings. But the key here is it was published by EA. Ken, do you know what other series EA makes?
Need for Speed.
That they do. So they had a good basis to start with. So every car in this game was a new for 1998 Volkswagen Beetle. It was originally supposed to be part of the Need for Speed series, but for whatever random reason, EA had signed an exclusive deal with Volkswagen, and so they were like,
Could you imagine like the Need for Speed Underground series? You got like your sweet Nissan Skyline, and then you just pull up with like your souped up Beetle.
Volkswagen Beetle, I know, right? But anyways, if nobody's ever played this game is so much fun. Even though all the cars are pretty much identical, you can unlock a bunch of new ones in different colors and stuff. There's a special police car version you can unlock, and then an alien Beetle as well. But you could have 2 to 4 players. You could do a single race, championship, or Beetle battle, which is basically a capture the flag. But their Beetle battle, I remember, was super cool. We had a lot of fun with it. But basically, as you go along with each track, as you beat track in the championship version of it, you'll unlock more cars and more tracks. And some things it was noted for was the graphics on it were really, really impressive for the N64, but also the size of the tracks were absolutely huge. They were massive. They had 6 courses plus another 9 separate ones for the Beetle battle courses. What I loved about this game so much is because the courses were so huge, there were multiple paths. Like, it wasn't just you go along a straight course and off you go. There were all these hidden like paths along each course that could get you to the end of the level. And that's what I probably found most amazing is every time you do a race, you could find a new course or a new part of the course you'd never been on before.
Yeah, it's funny seeing this again. I did not realize that you hear they only had 6 courses, but I do not remember us being like, oh, there's only 6 courses.
Yeah.
Like you said, like each level was so sprawling and massive, and it was like, hey, like, does this look like we could go this way? And I remember like you'd go over like a little jump, and then you'd go over a cliff through a waterfall. The next thing you know, like you're in a whole different part and going. And real quick, I remember you used to get so upset at me because I'd always pick the police car, the police Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah.
And that had a hidden feature where if you drove behind someone, it would automatically make the car in front of you slow down
and move out of the way.
And move out of the way. And then there was a special thing that the alien Beetle did, but I don't remember exactly what that was.
Yeah, I don't remember either, but I remember it's probably the one thing I distinctly remember about this game is, like I said, there are all these different courses. And when I was reading, the designers, they actually traveled to like different parts of the world to get ideas, and they basically mimicked like specific key features in different parts of the world that they went to and traveled to. But I remember once there was like a path you would go through, and I think it was like on the side of a mountain, and the mountain like exploded, and it was a giant alien ship, and I was just like,
Yes.
"Holy crap!" And again, I thought the graphics were so amazing for an N64 game. They're just very detailed, and I think by having all the cars the same, essentially, it allowed them to put so much more time and emphasis into like the world around you. And that's what was so impressive about this game is we're just you go through bales of hay, which would then lead to a course, and you can go off of buildings. And like you said, you'd be like in a cavern somewhere, and it would split off into like 4 or 5 different paths that you could take, and then each of those would diverge into different paths. So every time you would do a course, they felt that's why I never thought that even though they only had 6 courses, we were never like, oh wow, there's only 6 courses. They were just
Right.
massive, and you could go so many different ways throughout it. When IGN reviewed this, they gave this a 9.1 out of 10 and ranked it 21 out of their top 25 N64 games. So they know a thing or two about video games and how to rate games, and they were as impressed with this game as we were. So if you've never checked it out, Beetle Adventure Racing, highly recommend it. How cool would it be if this came to Switch Online and we could play?
Oh, I would love it. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that this would be a great choice for them to bring for the N64 Virtual Console.
Yeah, that's the one thing actually I was just thinking about is I don't think there's any racing games currently out there for N64 for the Switch Online. But if they
Well,
could start bringing in some
F-Zero.
racing game. Yeah, well, yeah, that just came out. But prior to
Yeah.
that, that'd be pretty sweet.
Because they don't have Mario Kart, do they?
It's a good question. I don't remember. I'd have to double check. They might have Mario Kart on there now. That
But-
might have been one of the launch ones. But yeah,
but-
like an actual like racing would be pretty dope.
Yeah, this would be a fantastic. I just remember when we were kids playing this that like we were surprised. We're like Beetle, Volkswagen Beetle, Spencer, and then we played it. Yeah, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh wow, this is really fun.
And
Yeah,
I still
great.
don't recall how we got what led us to be like, oh, let's pick out Beetle Adventure Racing.
Yeah, it had to have been Dad.
Yeah,
We'll say it was Dad.
we'll say it was Dad. Good job, Dad.
So moving forward from unless do you have anything else to say?
Nope, I am super excited for this next one.
Yeah, so moving forward, sticking with a racing game, another game that I probably would put higher than Beetle Adventure Racing.
For like
Wow.
replay value and entertainment and fun, absolutely.
A sequel to one of our favorite games from the regular Nintendo for the Nintendo 64 came Excite Bike 64.
Awesome.
This game was amazing. It was released for the Nintendo 64 on April 30th, 2000 in North America. It actually came out a year later in Japan in June 8th, 2001. I'm sorry. It came out just a few months later in Japan on June 23rd, and then the following June 2001 for Europe.
There you go.
And so, so as I said earlier, this was the second installment of the Excite Bike series. It was loaded. This game literally was loaded with so many. You had the regular season. You had 20 tracks. Obviously, in completing races, gave you and unlocked more stuff. But this had so many mini games. I remember we spent hours in the hill climb. They had a soccer game. So have you ever heard of Rocket League?
Yeah. That I would imagine it was a game like this probably helped inspire games like Rocket League.
Correct. So I don't remember us playing the soccer game on this all that often.
Yeah.
But so you had your regular season. You had a stunt course where you could actually do tricks and stuff like freestyle.
That was
You
my
had
favorite.
You had the hill climb, which I remember us doing the hill climb a whole bunch.
Mhm.
You had the soccer game. And then you even had a randomly generated infinite desert track where you had to go and put out these campfires by driving over them. It was just for the time and for the console, just being the 64. It was a really kind of high tech, sort of mode for it. I just thought it was a really brilliant mode. But Taylor, what did you think of Excite Bike 64?
So like I said, first of all, the amount of tracks it had was awesome. The graphics were very impressive for, again, the console. It was towards the later part of its life. I mean, I think the N64 came out in '96, and this again released in 2000. But by far, my favorite part was the stunt course. So it was at a time where you and I were huge into X Games. We used to love watching like Travis Pastrana and a bunch of the other guys who would do these amazing stunts. And then he actually had a game that came out where you could mimic a ton of these things. And basically, we just kept trying to up the ante, and you'd have a time limit, and you could go around these courses and just do some like insane stunts and just rack up points and stuff. I love the racing part of it, but my favorite was definitely the stunt course. And yeah, we played the soccer game. I know a few times where basically you're just a rider on top of a bike, and there's a giant soccer ball, and you're just kind of trying to hit it to knock it past the other person and score goals. But the hill climb is really cool. But by far, stunt course was absolutely my favorite part of the game. And I would just, you're right, we'd spend hours and hours playing this game.
And I don't remember, did we own this one as well, or did we rent this one?
I think we rented it like a bunch of times. We probably should have. We probably could have owned it for the amount of money we spent renting it. Because I definitely know we rented this numerous times, and probably one of my favorite games for the N64.
Oh yeah, this is up there a lot. I mean, speaking of what the rating it got, IGN gave it a 9.7 out of 10. If that tells
That's amazing for
anything.
a dirt biking game.
Yeah, I mean, we kid you not, when we said that this game was loaded, it was loaded with features, loaded with just different things you could do. This is definitely one where I would love to go back and play just to see, like, okay,
Yeah.
Is it, does it hold up? Is it as good? Actually, what I would love is, I would love if this game got the treatment that Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 got. I would love to see that.
Or even if they just added it to the Switch Online to see if it's as good as we remember, or if we are romanticizing how good it was. But I have a feeling it would definitely still hold up, especially the stunt course, for sure.
Same.
Yeah. So excellent job picking this one. Yeah, so we each picked 5. This was on Ken's list of 5 that he picked out. And absolutely one of my favorites. Good choice. Job well done.
Thank you.
Now, this next game on our list. In terms of obscurity, I don't think I've met another human being when I've talked about video games, when I've mentioned this game, they're like, oh yeah, I've played that. Or even, oh yeah, I've heard of that. This next game, we definitely owe to our father. Lester the Unlikely.
Oh.
So the way this game goes, if I recall correctly, there was a game that came out called Pitfall. And again, our father went to the store to buy it for us, and it was all sold out. It was one of the hottest games of the year. And the clever person who worked at KB Toys, I assume, was like, oh, we have this other game that's similar to it. It's called Lester the Unlikely. I'm sure your kids would love it. And Dad was like, yeah, sure. So it's on our list of hidden gems. This is an acquired taste kind of game. Takes a little bit to get into. It was released in 94. So it was a few years into the SNES's life. So again, it's on Super Nintendo by a company called Visual Concepts. They were best known for their 2K games, which was later acquired by Sega in 99 and then sold to Take-Two Interactive in 2005. I couldn't really find anything else that they did that was all that impressive, but the graphics on Lester the Unlikely was so colorful. That's very vivid. But basically, it's the story of this, for lack of a better term, this geeky teenager boy who falls asleep on the docks next to a cargo ship. They accidentally load the cargo ship onto the ship, and then it's attacked by pirates, and he gets stranded on a deserted island. And what's really so kind of funny about this game is he's scared of everything in the beginning. Like literally the first monster, quote unquote monster you get to is this crab. And as he walks up to it, he gets scared and runs away from it. And then you slowly like kind of inch your way back to it, and you can kick your little foot to like hurt the crab and knock it over, or there are turtles on the island. But slowly throughout the game, Lester develops kind of more confidence in himself, and you eventually have to rescue this tribal leader and his daughter from a giant gorilla, and then the pirates who have the tribal leader as you make your way across the island. Anyways, it's a game I think everybody should check out. It takes a little bit to get into, but again, I've never even met anybody who's heard of Lester the Unlikely. Have you, Ken?
No, I haven't, and it's so funny because again, this is a game that we owned and a game that we played through many times. This is a game that you can play through it in one sitting.
Yeah.
It's not totally, it's not very long, maybe 2 hours max or so.
Yeah.
It's funny. I know that you have played it many times.
Yep.
You are my nephew, your son. He loved watching you play through this game. Probably honestly because of how bright the colors are. I mean,
Yeah.
and at the time, it is kind of cool to see how literally Lester, like you said, develops. Becomes more courageous and walks. I remember also in the start of the game, he walks like kind of hunched over, right, and
Yeah.
like all lean forward, and then by the end of the game, he's walking all upright,
He's
chest
got some
out, and
swagger.
got some swag. Got the
Yeah.
chief's the tribal leader's daughter on his hip. Not on
Yeah.
his hip, but
I will say the difficulty on the game is fairly high level, mostly just due to the controls. And at the very end of the game, spoiler alert, when you rescue the tribal chief leader, you have to pick up this ladle with water and you dump it on this dynamite crate to put the dynamites out. But if you put it in the wrong spot by like a fraction of an inch, it blows up and you have to start the whole level over again. There were numerous times I made it to the end of this game and I would dump the water in the wrong spot and blow up, and I'd be like, "Screw this game," and I would get up and walk away because I'm like, I'm not doing this level over again. But eventually I was like, I got it in the right spot and saved the tribal leader, and I was very happy. But yeah, the first I played through this last year with my son on an emulator, and the very first part of the game when Lester runs up to or just kind of glides up to the crab and he gets scared and run away, he laughed so hard. He thought it was hilarious, and I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty funny. And I beat the game in one sitting in about an hour and a half, so you can make it through pretty quick. And I finished it, and he's like, let's play it again. I was like, no, I beat the game. He's like, yeah, but let's play it again. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I beat the game. It's done. We're moving on to a different game. I'm not playing it again. Lester the Unlikely, for anybody. It's a hidden gem. A very tiny gem.
I remember when I was a kid, I always used to get freaked out in the part. You come across this part where you have these 3 skulls.
Oh yeah,
right. It's skulls, and you have to drop them into.
Well, so they give you a warning ahead. There's 3 different skulls, and they give you this like ominous warning ahead of time. You have to drop the correct one into the lava. If you drop either one of the 2 that are incorrect in, this ghost will swoop down and kill you. But if you drop the correct one, then it basically opens up the path ahead of you and you can keep walking. But yeah.
Yeah, that ghost scared me when I was a kid.
Dude, I'm 37 and he scares me.
Did you show Braden the ghost?
Yeah, it didn't face him one bit, a little bugger.
He's a tough kid, so
he is a tough kid.
But yeah, Lester the Unlikely, it's an unlikely hidden gem.
It is a very unlikely hidden gem.
And also for those of you who, if you're not going to go out and play it, I highly recommend going on YouTube and just typing in this game just to see what we're talking about.
Dude, I will say when I was doing my research on this, I read about it actually a while ago. There was a second game that was originally planned for this, and they started like interviewing the designers of the first one, and every one of them hated the game. This is the worst game that's ever been made, and they all disbanded and refused to make a second one.
Wow.
Yeah, there was some group that was like, oh yeah, we want a second one for the SNES, and a bunch of designers were like, no, this is the worst game ever in existence. They were like, no, but mind you, this was before Return of Superman for the N64 came out.
Took the cake. So Lester the Unlikely, great. Yeah. Another great pick.
Yeah. Your turn, Ken.
Next, I chose the game for the Game Boy Color, Survival Kids. This was released in Japan on June 17th, 1999, and then in October 1999 for the North America. And then Europe got it in 1999 as well, but December 10th.
Always late to the party.
Always late. That's
I know, right? Yeah.
So this game, as the title suggests, Survival Kids, this gameplay revolves. It's actually kind of funny considering we just talked about surviving on a deserted island, but Lester the Unlikely. This revolves around surviving on a deserted island. So same thing. You're on a boat sinks, and you wind up on this island. And now the cool thing about this game is it had you kind of walked around in a very like Link to the Zelda Link to the Past sort of feel, kind of almost like top down look, and as you travel around screen to screen. on the island, and you literally have to track multiple things. You have to track your hunger, your thirst, fatigue meters, as well as actual health points. And so you have to make sure that you are drinking clean water. You have to make sure you're eating, finding a place to rest. The cool thing about this, though, is I actually had a what? Why are you laughing?
So basically, it was like a Tamagotchi for your Game Boy Color.
Yeah, pretty
Okay,
much.
all right. When I read your description of it, I was like, oh, it's a Tamagotchi. That's cool. Or a little Digimon.
Yeah, with a storyline.
You got to clean up their poop and swipe away their poop and make sure they're eating and drinking enough.
Yeah, no, there was
Go
no
on.
pooping. There was
Okay.
no pooping in this game. But so you could choose whether to be a boy or a girl. And the really cool thing is, depending on who you chose, at another point later in the game, you could find the other, the boy or the girl, whichever
cool.
one you didn't pick. But with that being said, this game was designed in a way that you could play through it in many different ways. And so, like kind of like we talked with one of our favorite games, Chrono Trigger, that had different endings. This game had different things you could do to achieve different endings. So depending on how fast you beat the game, or with the different things that you were able to do to get off the island, gave you different endings. So you could go through the game and not even find the other counterpart to the main character. There was a lot of different endings. Really cool. The big thing about the game was there was a crafting system, so you could combine 2 or 3 objects, and you could make, say, weapons or tools or other items that you could assist the player, and they just called it merging. So like, I remember you could find a curved wood and then ivy, and you could turn that into a bow, and then you could find sticks and arrowhead rocks and create arrows. And there was like snakes and stuff on the island, and then you got a like this monkey as a pet as well. So it was a pretty involved game for the time. Like I said, it was for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. It was a really fun game. Had very little kind of RPG-esque type qualities to it, but they came out with sequels called Lost in Blue, and then other like Survival Kids games for others, for like the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy, or the Nintendo DS. So it's another game I don't hear a lot of people talk about. I personally never would have heard of this game if it wasn't for a buddy of mine in elementary school who actually had this game. And that's how I heard about it. And he let me borrow it. And so that's how I played
Oh, is that
it.
where? Oh, I didn't realize. I thought you had owned this game, but
Nope.
he let you borrow it.
He let me borrow
cool.
it. Yep. And so that's how I heard of it back when I was in elementary school. And since then, I talking to friends and stuff, not many people I talk to have heard of this game, played this game. So
yeah, when we started kicking around ideas of hidden gems, and I was doing some research on, like, obviously you and I over the years we've played thousands of games, and of course I'm not going to remember all of them. So I just started like reading up on different like hidden gems and small stuff, and I just came across a tiny little screenshot from Game Boy Color of this game, of them like on the island, and it jogged my memory, and I'm like, oh shit. I was like, this looks really familiar. And I remember I messaged you, and I was like a couple days back, and I'm like, did you used to have a game called Survival Kids? And you were like, oh yeah. And it all kind of came back to me. And I maybe played it for like a few minutes at one point in between when like you were playing it. But this one I might check out on an emulator. I just remember thinking it was just a cool idea, and I didn't even realize until we started going through this that part about keeping track of like hunger and thirst and fatigue, and even the ability to like craft items. That's pretty impressive for a Game Boy game, especially back 20 plus years ago.
yeah,
That's a cool game.
it's funny. I actually watched a quote unquote perfect playthrough of this game on YouTube a couple of years ago, and so it was really cool to just see that the game played again. So I definitely recommend checking it out. There's obviously, the game is filled with like little puzzles and stuff that you have to solve, and you like find this boat, and you need to find like certain this is like later down the road in the game, but I think you have to find like these certain like artifacts to like unlock the boat to like sail and get off the island and stuff. And
That's cool.
like that, but like that's one of multiple ways to make it off the island. I think another one because you actually like sleep and it'll like track the days that you're on the island. I think another one is if you just survive like a certain amount of days, you end up getting rescued. So that's another way
A different
to
ending.
get off the island. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, pretty cool. Again, for just a handheld Game Boy title, it seemed
Mhm.
like it had a lot to it. So yeah, really cool game.
Very nice. So next on our list, this was a game for the NES. This is one, again, I think we rented a bunch of times. I don't believe we owned this. But this is one recently I've heard a lot more, or I've seen a lot more discussions about it online. This is Little Nemo, the Dream Master. It was released back in September of 1990, developed by Capcom. They know a thing or two about making difficult games, and this was definitely on the more difficult side of games, especially for the NES. But it's actually based on an animated film from Japan called Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, which was also based on a comic book of the same title. But basically, you're the journey of this young boy making his way through Nightmare Land, which is basically his dream, and to rescue Morpheus. No, not Lawrence Fishburne. Uh, but you're basically rescuing him. He's the king of Slumberland, and he was captured by an evil nightmare king. But it was pretty cool. You had a bunch of different animals that you could throughout the levels. That you had this like unlimited supply of candy. Guess it would make sense if you're a boy in Dream World, and you would throw these pieces of candy at these different animals, and then you could use them to help you complete each level. They all had different abilities. There was a ton of different animals. You had a frog, a gorilla, a mole, a bee, a lizard, a hermit crab, a flounder, and a mouse. So all of them had different abilities. Like your frog, like to jump higher. Gorilla was obviously really strong. Um,
Well,
and
could
they just
let you
kind of
dig.
that. Yep, will let you dig. I know, right? Shocker. But it was like I said, it was a difficult game, but it was a lot of fun. Graphics were pretty impressive for an NES game. Again, this was towards the end of the NES's life cycle. But each level, you had the one thing that made this difficult, the game very difficult, is there were keys you had to collect along each level, and there were multiple paths you could take throughout the level. But you didn't know how many keys you needed until you got to the end of the level, and then you get to this door, and they'd be like, "Oh, you needed 4 keys," and you're like, well, son of a bitch, I only got 3 keys. You had to backtrack through the level, trying to find out where this hidden key was. So that was one thing that made it difficult. But IGN ranked it 68 in their top 100 NES games. And again, this is one I rented a bunch of times as a kid. I never beat it earlier on the original NES, but I did play through and beat it a couple years ago on an emulator. God bless being able to save wherever you wanted. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have made it through. But highly recommend if you haven't checked it out. Again, this one has gained notoriety, I think, in the last couple of years as a hidden gem. But definitely one I had on my list and one I would recommend to anybody.
Yeah, so I don't think I've actually played this game before. I never even saw the movie until just a handful of years ago. My wife, she loves this movie. She loved this
Really?
movie. Yeah,
I
as a
didn't.
little.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't. I've never seen the movie. I didn't realize you had watched it.
Oh, you've never seen the movie? Yeah. So
No,
like I said, yeah. So I hadn't either until just a few years ago. My wife Emily loves this movie,
that's
and
cool.
I have known of this game. I know that this is a favorite game of yours from their regular Nintendo. And so yeah, so I watched the movie just a handful of years ago with her, and it is a really cool movie. I highly recommend you watching. You and Braden should watch this movie. I think he would like it a lot. It's obviously
Hmm.
it's a kid movie, but it's very well. The animation on it is obviously it's back back I think in the 90s or late 80s is when the movie came out.
Yeah, I would
Um,
imagine if the game came out in '90, the movie probably came out in late '80s.
yeah, mid to late 80s. So it's all say drawn, but the
Mhm.
animation is really good. um and this, so obviously the game story follows the movie story. So yeah, really cool game. Again, I don't know, too many people these days don't talk too much about the regular Nintendo, so definitely a good hidden gem in my book.
Cool. What do you got next, Ken?
So this is a very fun game, especially one from our past called
Yes.
Mercs. And I actually learned quite a bit of stuff on this that I did not realize. So we first came into contact with this game after working at FunSpot, so the world's largest video game arcade in Laconia,
Yeah.
New Hampshire. They had this game as a cabinet, as an arcade cabinet, And so this, I guess, was originally released as Senjo no Okami 2, Wolf of the Battlefield 2 in Japan.
Didn't know that.
So yeah, so did not know that either. This was actually a sequel to a game called Commando, which
Wow.
I had no idea.
They also
So
have that at Fun Spot.
they do.
Yeah.
So this is a your typical run and gun shooter. Again, this was an arcade video game that was published by Capcom in 1990, and it was a sequel to the 1985 game Commando. So the arcade version had 3 players available, and one of the big things about this game, and one of the players that we love so much, is the red character, who at Taylor's favorite color is red. His name is Howard Powell, and of course mine and Taylor's last name is Powell, so we always thought that was so cool that there was a guy in the game that had our last name
that was named after us.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I don't think we have any Howard Powells in the family, but
no. If we did, he'd be a mercenary.
Yeah. So the other 2 characters were just all distinguished by colors. You had the blue character, who was Joseph Gibson, and then the yellow character, who was Thomas Clark. So I always played the blue character. Blue was my favorite color.
Yep.
And if I don't know, if we had a third person, one of our cousins or dad was with us, he would usually be the yellow guy. So
he'd be the caps off. Dad, he could be the yellow guy. Nobody cares about him. He's Joseph Gibson or something, or no, Thomas Clark-ish.
Thomas Clark. So yeah, so this was a cool game. These members, they were a part of a covert mercenary team known as Wolf Force.
Ooh.
And really kind of simple game. Of course, for back then, if just a run and gun shooter, you had 2 buttons. You had your normal attack where you shot, and then you had the Mega Crush attack, which was just this giant AOE area of effect, screen wiping big bomb that would probably just go off and kill all the enemies on the screen. Other than bosses, it would just do a really big damage to bosses, but any just little enemy would automatically take them out. But you had typical first aid kits that would restore part of your energy. But the biggest and coolest thing were the different power ups. So you had your just default gun that that shot bullets, but then you could upgrade that into an assault rifle. You get which was more like wider ammo and shot much faster. You had a shotgun that shot these looked like little balls that shot out in an arc.
Yeah, was it 3?
Like a fan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You had your grenade launcher, which I think it just shot really powerful
grenades.
Yeah, but it shot almost they looked like more like missiles. I feel like that shot. But the most powerful weapon in the game that we loved getting was the flamethrower.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, so think Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
If you just hold down the button and it would just a fan of flame, you just walk around in circles, wiping everybody out. Loved it.
And I believe you had infinite ammo.
Yeah,
when you had
held it down, and it was just the stream of fire everywhere. It was the best weapon in the game by far.
And the movement was really fluid in the game, so you could literally just rotate the joystick and easily spin around. So you could just this walking, spinning death of flame, and it was a lot of fun. So that came out for the there was a Mega Drive version of the game that was produced by Sega. That was first released in Japan in September 27th, 1991, and then after that, it did come to North America and Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But with that version, which was actually a little bit different than the arcade version, it had 2 different game modes. So you had your arcade mode, which had the same plot and stages as the arcade version. Makes sense.
That's why they called it arcade mode.
Arcade mode.
Yeah.
But then they also had an actual original mode that had a new plot line and with all new stages. So once I found out about that, I almost want to find a ROM of it so I could we could play through that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And then another something that actually made the original mode a little bit different than the arcade mode as well is they had weapon shops that were throughout the game, and where you could actually buy power-ups for your character using currency that you got from just from taking out enemies and going through that way. So that was a little bit different, which was cool. But yeah, this was a really a really fun game. The game that we love. Obviously, we only knew about it because we
of the arcade.
we grew up and then in turn worked at a video game arcade that they had. So if anyone from Fun Spot's listening, I was just there recently and they no longer have Mercs on the floor. Bring it back, Fun Spot.
Yes.
Bring it back.
Yeah, this is Ken and I have sunk, I don't know how many dozens and dozens and tens of dollars into this game. I know we've played through it and beaten it at least once, probably more than once.
Oh yeah, definitely more than
but
once.
The one thing you didn't mention about this that I used to love too is so to get the different upgrades, you would shoot at like these crates and they would unlock things, but they also had like boats and tanks and stuff that you could use. So you remember they had like jet skis. So you could there'd be soldiers on the jet ski, you could kill them and then get into the jet ski, which would shoot its own type of missiles and stuff. And you could blow up bridges and all. Just the graphics were so much fun, and just the amount of weapons. I absolutely loved it. I have not played like the Sega Genesis version of this on the home console, but I would like to check it out. When a few years ago, I had read about this and realized I didn't even know until then that there was a home console version. And then to find out that they actually have like a whole separate mode, I was like, I got to check this out at some point, which I haven't done yet, but I would like to check it out. Very cool.
Yep, awesome game.
Yeah, especially since Howard Powell rules. Whoever you are, Howard, you're amazing. So very good game. So moving on from there, this next game on our list is, in terms of favorite games, just games in general, might be in my top 5. I absolutely love this game. It came out by a very well-known developer called Rare. They had a string of hits for the N64 and the Super Nintendo. This one, again, not very many people have heard of that I've talked to, and like very few people have played it. Jet Force Gemini. I think this is a game Dad picked up or somebody got us for a birthday or Christmas, and it is easily one of my favorite games of all time. It was, fairly, a few years into the N64 development, so they polished quite a bit for the hardware. But then to get Rare involved with it, obviously very famous for the Donkey Kong Country series and especially for GoldenEye, they took so many elements of other games and kind of combined it into this one. Essentially, it was a third-person shooter. If you followed 3 characters, you had Juno, Vila, and Lupus, and you were these galactic law enforcers trying to stop Insectozoid called Mizar, and you explored these worlds saving tribal. So think kind of like GoldenEye combined with Ocarina of Time and Star Wars, basically. You have these little tribals that looked almost exactly like Ewoks.
Yeah.
But just the visual effects and the colors of this game, I thought were amazing. It was probably one of the best looking games to ever come out on the N64. It just seems so polished for its time. But basically, your characters, you started out separated, your ship blows up, and your first level, you're playing as Juno. And then as you make it through certain levels, you would then take over and play as Vela, who is a girl, and then eventually as Lupus, who is a dog. And they all had different abilities, but eventually you would meet up, and then you could go backtrack through levels you had been in previously and access areas of the games that you couldn't access with the other characters. So they all had different abilities. Juno, for instance, he could walk on like magma or lava. Vila, she could swim. And then Lupus, who is super cool, he could hover for brief periods of time. It was a pretty big game. There were 15 worlds. They were all had series of stages in them. And then each stage was connected by a door. Some, just when you made it to the end, would automatically open. Others required defeating all of the enemies in the level, or you had to collect certain keys. One thing I didn't realize, and I didn't remember back on, but when I was doing research for this, there was a ton of weapons for this game. Ken, do you remember what kind of weapons they had for this game by chance?
I do, yeah. I remember they have. Well, first off, I remember you had to go back one time because you missed, because there was a weapon that you could miss really early. Oh yeah, I can already see the look on your face. How frustrating that was for you when you found out about this weapon that you had missed it. Because I don't believe you could go back and get it. I think you had to restart the game.
So what happened? So what happened? You could play as you could play through certain levels as certain characters, and eventually you could meet up and you could pick which character you want to play as. I loved Lupus. He was the dog. He had some really cool abilities. So eventually I just started playing as him later on in the game as much as possible, and you would get power-ups. but those power-ups didn't transfer to the other characters. So like if you had a certain weapon, you had a limited amount of ammo, but as you got power-ups, it would increase the amount of ammo you could carry for that. What I didn't realize when you got to the end of the game and you faced the boss, you could only face the boss as Juno. So all of a sudden I got to the end of the game and I was screwed because I had just used Lupus for like 80% of the game at one point and had all the power-ups for him. And I remember I got to the boss and I'm like, oh frig, I can only play as Juno. And I used every ounce of ammo I had for every single gun except for the pistol. And and he'd still be alive. And I eventually had to start the whole game over. And I realized, okay, I thus had to start playing more with Juno on the second playthrough. So I made sure I had enough ammo to actually beat the boss. That was insanely frustrating. But they had a ton of weapons. You had a pistol, a plasma shotgun, a tri-rocket launcher, a flamethrower, a shocker, shurikens, grenades, remote mines, cluster bombs, and proximity mines. I forgot about half of those weapons until I started doing some research on this.
Yeah, for some reason I was thinking the shuriken was something that you missed in like you could get the shuriken really early on, and for some reason I thought I remembered you for like missed it, and
I may have at some point, but I just remember how frustrated it was that I literally played through the entire game, made it to the boss, and realized as I'm facing him, I don't have enough ammo to actually beat this guy. Like this is ridiculous, and I had to play the whole thing over again. One thing that was really cool that I loved about this, you do get to a point when they all meet up, and the first time you face kind of like the big bad guy Mizar, it was in a kind of a two-part. You face him once, and then you have a bunch of other levels you have to go through, and you face him again. But you get to this giant kind of like palace type place,
pyramid,
and
right?
it's a pyramid, yeah. And you have to assemble these pieces to create a robot called Floyd. The thing that was cool about Floyd, he was basically part of Mizar's army, but he defects away from him. If you played with a second player, the second player in person could control him, and he had these two little lasers, and he could help you out and shoot. And so I used to love playing this. Ken was, quite a bit younger than me, and he would pick up the second controller, and we'd play through levels, and he would just fly around as Floyd, shooting the crap out of all these giant ants and bugs that were in the game. That was probably one of my favorite things. That was really cool. But there were a ton of collectibles. Again, just for the time period, there were so many things you could do in this game. So these giant ants that would attack you, and you could literally like shoot parts of them. You could shoot their heads off and then collect their heads as kind of a token, which is pretty cool. So the graphics I just thought were amazing. And frankly, it was a little violent for a Nintendo game of that time. I was surprised. Yeah. But probably one of my top 5 favorite video games of all time. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, this is a game that I am shocked that that Rare has never done a sequel with, hasn't done anything else with the franchise, especially going Rare, the developer, being owned by Microsoft and moving to Microsoft. This seems like it would have been a game like right up Microsoft's alley that they'd want to do something with. It's a lot of fun. And didn't this game have multiplayer as well?
Yeah, so there was you could do like a multiplayer, kind of like a GoldenEye type thing where you could play against each other with weapons and stuff like that. And I think that was something that, like, as you went through the game, you could unlock different courses for the multiplayer and different weapons as well. The multiplayer on this, I will say, wasn't nearly as good as GoldenEye, but the actual playthrough of the game I thought was amazing. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah,
even though I essentially had to play through it twice,
which is completely fine. I remember one of the things that shocked me most about this game is like you said, you play through the game. You play through essentially what is just the first half of the game, and you get to the big boss and you beat him, or whatever happens, and you think you won, but then there's a second half to the game, and you get new armor for each of the main characters.
Yeah.
And the game kind of delves even deeper. I just remember being a kid watching you play this, beating him, be like, oh yeah, right, we beat the game, and then it continuing and getting like the better, cooler looking armor and stuff. I was blown away. I was just like,
and one thing that Rare is kind of known for, like, if you ever played through did you ever play Donkey Kong 64?
I have played it. I've never beat it.
It's massive, but one of the biggest things is all the collectibles. And when it came out, it held the Guinness Book World Record for most collectibles ever in a video game. But there were tons of levels you would go through, and there was a bunch of side pieces that you couldn't get to unless you unlocked other characters. Then you have to come back through the same level. This wasn't quite to that extent, thank God, because that got a little tedious. But there were a bunch of levels in this where you would go through and you would see like things of water or ledges you couldn't reach with one character. And once you kind of got to a point where you met up with the other characters, you could go back through the level with, Lupus the dog or Vela the girl and access those other portions that you couldn't get to before, which I thought was really cool. It definitely added like replay value and just made the game seem even that much bigger. Even though you had been there once before, all of a sudden you get access to new areas they couldn't get to before. And like I said, I just think the graphics of this were probably better than just about any game that came out on the N64.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is
Yeah.
another game that I would love to see them add to the Nintendo Switch Virtual Console.
Oh my God, yes. You would not hear from me for like 3 weeks.
So yeah, great pick. Again,
Yeah,
like you said, probably one of my favorite games of all time as well.
excellent. Moving on.
So moving on, this is another game that we owned.
Yes.
This one we both kind of went back and forth on. Is this necessarily a hidden gem? There's probably a lot of plenty of people, especially probably one of the ones out of the list that a lot of people more so than a lot of the other ones probably have heard of or played through. But
Yeah.
again, this next one, X-Men Mutant Apocalypse. Don't know how many people actually remember this one, but this was released for the Super Nintendo in 1994. It did get a lot of high praise and a lot of critical acclaim for being probably one of the best X-Men video games to come out at that time. You had 5 different characters that you could control. You had Beast, Cyclops, Gambit, Psylocke, and Wolverine, which are 5 of some of the most badass X-Men that you could have.
Yeah.
Especially, I always liked Psylocke. She kicked ass. She was awesome, and she was a X-Men that I hadn't heard of because I didn't read the X-Men comics. I only watched the X-Men
TV
the animated
series.
the animated
Yeah.
series. And I don't think I don't ever remember her being featured in the animated series. So
If she was, it was like very minimal. I don't think before this game came out, she was the one person where I'm like, who the hell is Psylocke? But yeah, she was pretty badass in this game. I liked her a lot.
Cyber or Psycho, like she's like a kind of telekinetic
Telekinetics.
assassin.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. And so the really cool thing too about this game is this game was really featured on its wasn't so much necessarily its level design, but actually its combat. You could use their abilities really freely, and just the combat was very not necessarily not really intuitive, but it didn't limit you. You couldn't just like, oh, use Cyclops eye beams 3 times and then you had to recharge. Like it was really heavily focused on the combat, so that got a lot of praise for that. But then also the level design. So it started off where you had to play through, each character had a level that you had to play through with that specific character. So you play through those 5 levels. Then after that, you had a number of levels that you could select and play through with any of them, I believe. And then you had 2 bosses that you had to fight in the I'm trying to think what the name, in the danger room. So Professor Xavier then says, okay, to challenge you, because Magneto is up in his space station that you have to go and fight. He's going to challenge you in the danger room to make sure you're ready and prepared to go up to space to fight Magneto. So you fought Juggernaut and I believe, is it Cable? I think was the.
Yeah, I believe so. I loved Cable. He was a cool character.
Yeah, he was. And you could fight those with anyone you wanted out of the 5 characters. And then same thing then to go up to and fight Magneto at the space station. It was just an awesome game. The level designs were really cool. What do you remember most about this game?
Yeah, I remember. So I played through this and beat this. This was the difficulty level in this game was pretty high. I took a very long time before I could make it through this, and I think especially I don't remember. It was like 1 or 2 of the character levels in the very beginning took a long time to make it through, and then from there you're like, oh, I finally made it through this, and then you get to the friggin' danger room and you're having to fight these like bosses, and they're just kicking your ass left and right. But yeah, I loved how each level, like each character had their own dedicated level, and they were kind of geared towards their abilities. Like for instance, Beast, his level took place in like there's like underground and there were pipes and stuff. So you like hang from the pipes and fight like upside down against people, hanging there with his feet. So just kind of like keyed in on those characters' abilities. But yeah, I just remember the graphics were really good on this, and it was even though it was a difficult game to play through, it was a lot of fun and just being able to use their abilities.
Remember, there was once you got through the first initial 5 levels, one of the levels after that, you had to like move fast because there was just a wall of lava.
Lava fire. Yeah.
Yeah, that was coming after you. That was, that was like really anxiety inducing for a little kid.
Yeah, you're like, oh my god, this wall of fire, and yeah, you make like one mistake and you're toast, literally and figuratively.
So yeah, so I'm like I said, we own this game again. Not sure who bought it for us or when even we got it, but I remember playing this one a bunch for the Super Nintendo. And again, just the level designs I thought looked really cool. Wolverine, you could use his claws to like climb up the level.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you could you could fight guys with like the claws retracted and punch them, but then I forgot you could use the claws to like stick into walls to climb up certain areas. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then of course Gambit, you had his bow staff, and then you could throw the exploding cards.
Yeah, I remember his boss at the end was the like helicopter, and it had the missiles that would drop on you and stuff. You had to throw the cards up to like take them out.
Oh, that's good memory. Yeah.
That's right.
Wolverine's boss level was the Sentinel, just the Sentinel head.
Yeah, that's right. That was tough. That bugger.
Yeah.
No, very really, good game. Yeah. Really cool game. Yeah, like I said, I'm sure a lot of people played it just because it was an X-Men game, but there was quite a few out for that like second generation of consoles. And so this one, again, if you hadn't played it, highly recommend it. Pretty cool game to check out.
X-Men Mutant Apocalypse.
There we go. So this next game is very near and dear to my heart. The reason for it, so this game is called Decap Attack. It came out for the Sega Genesis. It was released in 1991. And the reason this is near and dear to my heart, growing up, I had these two brothers that I was two of my best friends, Matt and Nick Grant. And we played, this was they had a Sega Genesis, so we used to play this quite a bit. And it just was something that always makes me think of them. I hadn't talked to Matt in years, and unfortunately his brother was tragically killed in a car accident a number of years ago. And so anytime I think about this game, it just makes me think of time playing with both of them. And but this game, it was made by a company called Vic Tokai, and they basically would localize games for the Japanese market over here in the US, and they eventually went out of business. But this game, it's kind of like the story of Frankenstein. So he makes this headless mummy called Chuck D. Head, like the letter D, Chuck D. Head. And the creator of it, his name is Dr. Frank, the letter N, Stein. Frank N. Stein. I mean, you can't make this up. And he has to defeat Max D. Cap, the letter D, Cap. Okay, this is very simple times. So Frank N. Stein creates Chuck D. Head to beat Max D. Cap. And so Chuck D. Head, if you're successful, Frank and Stein will turn you into a real human. But essentially, it was a platformer game. So Chuck D. Head, you have to collect these special items at the end of each stage, which you bring back to Frank and Stein, and he helps to defeat Max D. Cap. But essentially, you have this face that's implanted in your body, and as you push a button, the face will shoot out of you and hit enemies to defeat them. But you can also find a skull that you can place on top of your head, and you can throw it like a boomerang. And it was just a very twisted, kind of weird. It makes me think a lot of like Beetlejuice in terms of gameplay. But it was a fun platformer, and if you've never seen it, I've never met anybody who's actually heard of this game or played it as well. But I have it on my phone. A couple years ago, Sega released a bunch of games for their iOS platform, and this was one of the ones that was on there, which I can't believe is on there, but I had to download it and play through it a couple times. I've never beaten this game, but it's a lot of fun. And again, just kind of as a game that is near and dear to my heart, just because of my memories of playing it when I was younger. But if nobody's played it, highly recommend checking it out. Ken, have you ever seen or heard of this game, Decap Attack?
I've never seen it, never heard it. So yeah, so when you brought this one up, when we went through our list of hidden gem games, and I saw this one on there, and I'm like, Decap Attack, what the heck is that? Never heard of that.
Yeah,
Sounds like a really fun little, kind of wild type game. So
yeah, the levels you play through, it's a bunch of islands, and they are pieced together to look like a skeleton structure. It just cracks me up with the names of the character of Chuck the Head, because you're basically taking a head and chucking it, and then it hits enemies and comes back to you like a boomerang. Again, for Max Decap, it just, I mean, come on, talk about 90s
yeah,
90s names.
humor.
I could see this being a cartoon. It reminds me of like Mighty Max type thing. Great TV series, by the way.
Very. Oh yeah, classic. Yeah, that's funny. That's good. I'll have to check it out. See some videos on it. I'm pretty curious.
A lot of fun. So, and part of the research I did on, I guess it was, there were a couple of games prior to this that this was a combination that they kind of like put together all these different. I think it was 3 other games that were never released here in America that they kind of put together and released over here. But yeah, it's a fun platformer game for sure. Decap Attack.
Decap Attack. That's awesome. And you said it came out for the Sega Genesis?
Sega Genesis, yes. Which we never owned a Genesis, so it's probably why you never played it or heard of it. But yeah, I highly recommend it for anybody who's never checked it out. Decap Attack.
Another, this isn't a game on our list, but when I think of Sega Genesis, I'll say again, this game is probably a little bit more well known, especially for those who own a Sega Genesis. But it also reminds me of Toe Jam and Earl, just as far as the kind of crazy, wacky platformer type game. Or the Sega like definitely had
Earthworm Jim.
Yeah, Earthworm Jim. Yeah, that's another
one. That was one that I almost had on my list here, but I didn't realize. Did you know there was a 3D version of Earthworm Jim that came out for the N64?
Not really. No.
I did not recall that being out, but I saw a couple of like gameplays of it when I was doing research for this episode, and I was like, Earthworm Jim came out for the N64. I had never seen it before, and it was pretty wild.
Very cool.
Yeah, moving on to the last game on our list. I know this is one that's near and dear to Ken's heart, and he talks about quite often.
Yes. So one of my favorite games is Sunset Riders. So I have a lot of very fond memories of this game. Was first introduced to this when I was 4 years old or so. My babysitter at the time, she had a Super Nintendo. One of the games that she had for it was Sunset Riders. So I used to play this game all the time when I was over there being babysat. And essentially, so this is another side-scrolling run and gun video game that was developed and released by Konami. So it was actually a arcade game originally. It was an arcade platform in 1991. It's a very similar style to, say, Contra, as far as running and shooting, and you actually have within each game level, you're going to the side, whereas say like Mercs, you almost were like running up the screen. It was like the page was scrolling down. Well, this was a side shooter, and the level you could kind of go like different levels. So at Sunset Riders, this was a Western, this was set in the old American West. And so as you're going through the levels, if you're going through a town, you could like be like on the street level and then jump up to like on top of a building and go across, buildings on the top, or then drop back down and walk on the street. And so they actually released 2 different versions of this as far as the arcade versions go, where you could either it was 2 players or 4 players. Now the home console that was released for the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, they were both just the 4-person the 4-person version. So the obviously the object of the game is there was 8 stages that you went through, and you'd go through the level, reach a boss, and so then you'd have to take out the boss. But the level design and the art style was it was a very fluid game. Also kind of like Mercs with the upgraded weapons. You could get power-ups where you could get like dual guns. You could upgrade the different like shots that you fired from it. You could slide to dodge enemies' bullets. Really, really cool. You had a couple levels that took place on horseback. Then each level ran into the next. So literally, like after the level on horseback, you would then like ride up to a moving train, jump onto the train from horseback, and then
That's
continue
cool.
like into the next level. Yeah, it's just a really fun game. So the four playable characters were Steve, and all four were bounty hunters. So you had Steve, who is a bounty hunter who he wields a revolver, um, but for some reason his bullets, I guess, were more powerful than another one of the characters was Billy. Billy Cool
Really
was his
cool.
name, and he speaks in like this Western country accent. Then you had
Wait,
Bob,
how do you know he spoke in a country western accent?
because in the game, like there was like actual like voice, like
They actually had voice acting back then
yeah, like for the just like little sound
in
bits,
the arcade version or the home console version.
home console.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
moving on. Billy
So
Cool.
yeah, so you had Billy Cool spoke in the Western country accent. You had Bob, who he had a rifle,
Bob.
and he spoke in a Southern American accent. You had Cormano Wild as a bounty hunter. He's wearing like a Mexican poncho and sombrero, and he had a double barrel shotgun.
Ooh.
Yep. And then a really cool thing is there's a little kind of Easter egg where if you're playing as him and
Hmm.
you beat one of the bosses, he actually takes the boss's sombrero and
Ah,
and wears his sombrero for the rest of the game, which is
that's
really
pretty
cool.
cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
dope for such an early game.
Yep. And so you had Steve, Billy Cool, Bob, and Carmano Wild.
Sounds like Bob and Steve got gypped. I mean, they're just Bob and Steve. They don't have Billy Cool and Carmano Wild. You would have thought they'd been like Steve Flamboyant and Bob Bobbers.
Oh, is that what you would expect? So the interesting thing, and something that I didn't know, because I've played the arcade version before. It's actually
Yep.
one of the I believe it's still standing, but one of the oldest standing drive-in movie theaters that's still around in the United States is in Weirs Beach, which is in a part of Laconia, New Hampshire. Um, they had one point in time when we were kids, they had a small arcade there that they
Oh, that's
actually
right.
but they had free. So all the games that they had in the arcade, you didn't need coins to operate. They just had
Oh, that's cool.
infinite credits on there,
And this
and
was one of the games.
this was one of the games that they had at the arcade. So I had experience with the arcade version from them, but mostly was playing it on the Super Nintendo at my babysitter's place. But what I didn't realize is that the Super Nintendo version was actually censored quite a bit from, say, like the Genesis version or the arcade version, which given
Shocker.
given Nintendo's history, not that much of a surprise. Now, with that being said, the things that were censored really, by today's standards, really are not anything,
Yeah, Nintendo was ahead of the game when it came to censoring some of these things. They're
yeah.
very forward-thinking company.
So for instance, you just said like in one of the levels you had a couple saloon dancers, which again, for those of you who do not know, the Super Nintendo is a 16-bit video game console. So you're not anything that's really graphic. It really isn't all that graphic. So they just made the dance hall girls dress a little bit more conservative. Some Native American enemies and characters were just replaced with regular outlaws, but so they did have a Native American character who originally was called Chief Scalpum.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
This one, they also, the name they changed him to, they also probably could have done a little different, but they changed his name to Chief Wigwam.
Yep,
which
only slightly racist, but
is definitely better than Chief Scalpum,
scalp them.
but probably could have done something other than Chief Wigwam as well. So
Yeah.
But again, this is back in the early 90s. Not saying it's right, but it's what they did. But the game was it's a lot of fun. It's a great side scrolling shooter. I love that the upgrades that you can get for your guns. It was a real fast paced gameplay. And I'm a sucker for like the Western. I'm a big fan of old Westerns, like TV
Mhm.
shows, and just that sort of genre of things. So this game is right up my alley and is a very fun game that people should go and find.
Very cool.
Have you
Well,
played this game? Do you remember Sunset Riders?
I remember you talking about it a ton. I've never played. I think I might have like picked it up for 2 seconds and played it, but I've never really jumped into it in depth at all.
So yeah,
But
this is games you should look at.
so there we have it. There is our list of our 10 hidden gems, and I'm sure at some point down the road we'll probably come up with another list here of other gems to check out. But we just thought this would be a good place to kick off with some hidden gems, things that people maybe never have experienced before, and just give you a little insight into them. But yeah, tops
Yeah,
that list.
and
But
and let us know too. Are we crazy?
yeah,
Are these hidden gems or are they not hidden gems? So yeah,
it's true.
how many of you guys have you actually played these games? Please, we really would love to hear from anyone who's listening. Again, the We're Brothers podcast at gmail.com. Send us the emails. We'd love to do a community email section each
Yep.
week. We'd just love to hear feedback on you. Still getting close to working on putting up a YouTube channel where I think it will be easier to get feedback and to hear back from the community. So
Absolutely.
we are still working on that, but that is definitely coming down the pipeline very soon.
Yeah, I'd say probably for me, if I had to pick three of these at the top of my list, Excitebike 64, Beetle Adventure Racing, and Jet Force Gemini. Awesome. Three amazing games I think would still hold up today.
Oh yeah, so definitely games that would hold up today. Yeah, I would Excitebike 64, Jet Force Gemini, and I'll just pick Sunset Riders because it's just so good.
So good. Chief Wigwam.
Chief Wigwam.
Oh man. So yeah, I think coming up next week. I don't know if we've really talked about what we're gonna be doing next week, but we got some good stuff on the horizon for sure. So yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in for this week. We'll be back next Sunday night for another installment of the Weir Brothers podcast. Ken, any final words of wisdom for our millions of listeners?
Words of wisdom. Oh man, I can't. Oh, boy, do I have words of wisdom.
Any words of wisdom you can share with us?
Yeah. Double check before you zip your fly.
Yep.
That's definitely a big one.
That's solid advice.
Yeah. For all the men out there. And trying to think. Nope, that's it. That's the biggest word.
I'd say the best advice I can give when it comes to video games is an old age adage of if at first you don't succeed, try again.
And if you're gonna throw your controller, make sure you
throw
it into something soft.
Yes. Don't aim your controller at the TVs. The TVs have done nothing wrong, but feel free to chuck them into pillows and couch cushions and scream loudly if nobody's home.
Exactly.
There we go. Yeah. For more advice of the Weird Brothers podcast, join us next week, where we will discuss something else enticing for you, I'm sure.
And you'll find us at the same bro place, same bro time.
The same bro channel, same bro time. All right, little Brobowski, signing off.
You have a good week, brother. I know I'll talk to you real soon.
I'm sure we will.
We're all right. To all of you out there, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week. We're brothers.
We still stand with Ukraine. We're brothers.
Stand with Ukraine. We're brothers.